Luis gets a thumbs up right now. He can tear one off right now. Just give himself an initial thumbs up. I'm going to give you an advantage from the start. You're going to need it. All good? Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all again. If we haven't met, I'm Brian Uzzi. I'm one of the co-directors here. Welcome to NICO. And in a moment, it's going to be my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Steve Franconeri. Before we get started, I wanted to announce something, and that is NICO's going to start a new series of talks. Once each quarter, we're going to do a skill-building weekly seminar. So Steve today is going to start us off with skill building. He's going to talk about something called point taken. I'll come back to that in a moment. And then next year, we're going to do something on how do you manage your network to be more creative as a scientist. We're going to do a piece on visualization for persuasion, creating and presenting figures because they're so important in producing good scientific papers. And then we're going to do something on how do you use a bot as a thought partner. All stuff to look forward to beginning next year. With that said, it's my pleasure to really introduce Steve Franconeri. He is one of the greatest assets here at the university. He's a cognitive scientist and a psychologist by training. He was one of the individuals, maybe it's going back 20 years now, to realize how important visualizations were going to be. And he began studying the visual cortex, the big bump in the back of your head. And I always find this so fascinating. 40% of your entire brain, it's like really important. And it does a lot of the processing before the rest of your brain ever catches up like that. Visual cortex is like a Ferrari and the rest of the brain's like a minivan. And it's always trying to keep up with it. He's going to come back and talk to us about that, some of that research that he's done. But today, he's going to talk about a really big problem that many people have tried to solve, which is how do you get people to listen to each other and be open-minded to begin changing their ideas, get people out of their echo chambers. And to do that, he has invented an exercise called point taken. It's the kind of thing that would be extremely handy for you sitting around the table with your relatives and you're having a political conversation. How does it help you make that conversation more rational and something that each party could learn from? And he's also going to focus it on the same way in which you might want to be better at arguing with your colleagues about ideas or working with reviewers to get them to accept the merits of your good ideas in your papers. So all of that is from Steve. On top of that, he's a very decorated scientist, has won many awards. He's an incredible fundraiser. He's gotten so many big grants. I would say universities never even paid you a salary. You've paid for yourself and many more. Go check out his work. It's really, really fascinating. My favorite paper, by the way, is his jump scare paper. Because I really like horror movies.
This is 20 years. This
it's still my favorite paper. Sorry.
This is good, yeah.
Where the best way to scare people is to come up from like the side and jump in front of them. But that's a whole nother story. Nonetheless, join me in welcoming Steve Franconeri. Thank you, Steve, for joining us.
Very kind, Brian.
Appreciate it.
Right, we also have, remember how you missed the gorilla? We have a version of that for charts. Maybe if people forget that I just say that, we'll do it in the fall data visualization workshop. Hey, y'all. This is going to feel a little bit more workshop today. I'm going to give you some demos of how to have better disagreements. We're going to have you actually play this game to have a better disagreement. We're going to note that your disagreement's going to be surprisingly calm. And then you're going to say, I wish I had this in my conversation with that colleague or that rival scientist or my angry uncle. And you could pull out the game, but that's not always practical. So we're going to give you some rules to walk away with for those verbal conversations at the end. And that'll give you a bit of a choose your own adventure. We're not going to have time to do a deep dive on the data, given the workshop that we're going to do, but I'll give you some options at the end for a menu. You all know about the Center for Enlightened Disagreement. You all know how important disagreement is for human interaction and good decisions. Let's have one now. Ready? You are on a Northwestern committee. You get to decide what speakers there are in large campus groups. And you are approached by someone that wants to bring a speaker in on the underrepresentation of women in economics departments, let's say here at Northwestern. And there's a researcher that argues that there is a genetic disposition within women that will cause them to have lower testosterone when they're younger, which causes them to play less with spatial toys, which causes them to be less likely to engage with mathematics, which means that distributionally, the distribution's a little bit shifted. And that's one of the reasons why there's underrepresentation in economics departments. You ready to have a disagreement about this? I know statistically, if there were a decision, not whether this person is right, whether you're okay with them even coming to campus and speaking. I know from polling that this room is going to be about 60-40. I won't tell you what the split is in that. So I know there's a lot of polarization in this room about whether that person should be allowed to speak on campus. Are you ready to debate this with your neighbor? 3, 2, 1, just kidding. Oh my God, I'm like nervous even talking about this, right? This is a really tough topic. And this is one that is special to me, special, infamous, because I was approached as director of the cognitive science program in 2019 by an undergraduate, a female undergraduate, who wanted to hold this debate at Northwestern. I had even picked out the opposing speaker who would argue that this is all just the way that young women are treated since birth. They get a bow on their head instead of a trunk, right? Her name is Nora Newcomb. She's at Temple University. She's a badass. It would have been cool to watch her work. But the point is, this was terrifying to me. And I, to be honest, I chickened out a bit. And I kind of waited till the student lost interest. And then I was like, okay, great. I don't have to deal with this. And that's a shame because in a way, I took that decision away from her, right? It was my role to make this decision, or at least to talk to a bunch of people, to think about the decision. And a decision had to be made collectively. And emotionally, it was just really tough for me. I'm a socially anxious kind of people pleaser at heart, right? So the idea of making that decision was really tough. And I hope I don't hope you all see, I know you all see that in politics, decision making like this about public policy, you all have some relative or old friend that you just cannot speak to anymore, I bet. And then organizationally, if you're in a meeting, a faculty meeting, if you have a rival at a conference, then there are tough topics where you want to have an objective debate about some theory in the field, and you know that emotions are going to get involved. Good news. There's ways to make all of these discussions more clear and more calm. They're just take a little bit to learn, and then they're really hard to implement when emotions rise again. So we're going to structure this game to make sure that you can see that it can happen. We're going to get an existence proof today, and then talk about the rules that you should try to use moving forward. Cool? Cool. Okay. So why do we want to have disagreement? Briefly, disagreement is good. All of us have independent information. We all have our own biases. We all have our own perspectives. And what we're supposed to do is to get people with different information, different biases, different perspectives in the same room. And then they do something, usually it's some sort of a debate like this, they push back and forth, and then the truth gradually emerges, in theory. That's what's supposed to happen in science, in government, and in law. Science, usually it works, but personalities get involved, egos get involved, power gets involved. Legal arena, why do you pay one lawyer more than another? It's because they're better at pushing their case. Government, I'm going to skip for now. The debate model can work, but it only works when it's super constructive, when it's designed well. I want to show you the least constructive form of debate. This is something that is really popular on YouTube right now. Raise your hand if you're familiar with this. Really? Seriously? Okay, interesting. If you do this in an undergrad classroom, every hand goes up. This series is super popular right now. This is called Surrounded. This is the most performative, cartoonish model of debate that you will find. And they do a 20-on-1 typically. What's that? You have grown up. Luis, when he was 19, used to do this, but now he's more mature. And I'm going to give you a 30-second clip from one of these debates so that you can see how I think debate can go wrong. And this is not what your future faculty meeting will look like, or your argument with maybe your argument at your uncle. Maybe this is what it looks like. But I think it's going to pull out all of the issues that come along with debate. I will give them a little credit. They have a new series called Middle Ground, the same production company, and they are trying to have a more calm debate, right? Like, I don't know if I would have started with this particular topic. Luis thinks we should teach the controversy, by the way, but I'm going to play you 30 seconds of this debate. This is Dr. Mike on the left, the handsomest celebrity doctor on YouTube, and he's going to be debating 20 people that believe in the MAHA health outlook. This is RFK Jr.'s flip the food pyramid, get a little more beef fat in your diet, vaccines not always good, etc. And they're going to be having a debate over who's right. And I just want you to watch 30 seconds of this and take notes about what you think goes well and what doesn't. Dr. Mike will have just said, when I come in this clip, he will have just said, hey, Aiden, that report that MAHA just released, that flagship report had 8 hallucinated citations and it was clearly written by AI. What do you think about that? So let's see how Aiden replies.
So to me, I think it's really scary.
Are you talking about the report that talked about like
It's the MAHA landmark report that they
1 in 30
celebrated.
children have autism? Because that's true.
I'm not arguing about individual claims.
Well, let's talk about that for a second.
Sure. I think more kids than ever before have been diagnosed with autism.
Okay,
I agree.
Why is that? If so, let me just ask you this. Do you think that America is the most unhealthy nation in the world?
No.
Okay, that's
In the
why?
world?
Yeah. We spend the most on healthcare.
Because
We're the
there's
most unhealthy.
countries
The
that
most
are.
highest rates
You
of
mean
chronic
from
disease.
in terms? You're comparing it probably to industrialized countries or like very
Yes,
wealtly
yes.
nations. But in the world,
We
I
have the
would
highest
say
rates
no.
of chronic disease. Would you say that?
I think we're up there. Look,
Okay.
who cares about absolutes?
Right.
We're up there. We're not doing great.
Okay.
Health-wise, we're terrible.
Okay.
In fact, a lot of
All right, I think that's enough. You get the idea if you haven't seen it before. What's productive and counterproductive? I'm guessing you're mostly thinking counterproductive. Why? What about it was counterproductive? What about the way this is set up is leading these two to be destined to just do this and not get anywhere? Thoughts? Yeah. Exactly. We've set it up as a competition. There is a winner and there is a loser. And even if somebody is clearly winning, the person who is not winning is never going to admit it because their ego just drops. They have to admit that they're wrong, especially when Aiden has 19 of his friends in his group circling around him, that as soon as he starts losing, they pull up little flags that kick him off the island. He loses his t-shirt and he's kicked off the team because he's not defeating this cartoonish evil enemy on the left of the screen. So setting things up as a competition instead of a collaboration is a terrible idea. You're just destined to not move forward. Other thoughts?
Is and that just seemed like I jumped from here to there to there to there to there,
Yes.
and there is no flow.
Yes, and I was a little bit unfair because this subsection of the interview started with a little prompt of like, Maha's research agenda is not moving health forward or something like that. But even with that, you're absolutely right. They are just bouncing between unrelated points and they're never finishing anything. As soon as someone says A, the other person says B, the other person says C, they're not listening to each other. They're not actually deciding where they agree and where they disagree and where the interesting middle ground is. They're just trading predefined points back and forth and not making any progress. Cool. Anything else? Yeah. From each other? Yeah. It's clear that when Aiden asks those two questions, he's looking for a particular response. And he so doesn't want agreement that he is upset right now. Look at his face. He's upset that Dr. Mike just agreed with him twice because that's not the point. The point is to embarrass the enemy, not to find common ground with the enemy. So well put. I think y'all have identified the 3 major things that go wrong here. I'm going to pull out the things that go wrong into 2 categories. Cognitive, like our thinking is just not going well, and we'll do that for a couple minutes, and then we'll move to emotional, where we're just not setting this up so that people can feel like they're safe in this environment. Cognitively, The actual exchange, as Luis mentioned, is just bouncing all over the place, and people are never finishing anything. What you just missed before Dr. Mike was speaking was Aiden gives this nice little argument triplet that is, I don't necessarily agree with all these statements, but at least it's coherently formed. And then Dr. Mike just ignores it because he knows it would take 10 minutes to unpack all of that and just starts talking about this hallucinated report. And then Aiden doesn't bother answering that because that's not going to help his case. Starts talking about how many kids have autism. Mike agrees. Oh, that's terrible. Let's move on. Starts talking about how America is the most unhealthy nation in the world. Mike agrees. I'm about to get kicked off the island. Cognitively, I see a couple problems here. Number one, thinking time. Doing this is really hard. Who was a debater in high school or does debate? Come on, admit it. Nobody? Okay, a couple of sheepish hands. There we go. This is like the highest IQ activity that anybody can do. It's really hard to think quickly, to organize information, to dissociate where you agree and disagree, to think of rebuttals. It's really hard. And they are time limited here. And you also have to have the dual task of thinking about your own argument, but also rebutting the opposite argument. Good luck doing all of this. Even if you could think clearly and you had plenty of time, now you got to remember what people said. I've said 5 things, you've said 7 things. The limit for new information for humans is like 3 things, so good luck. You're not going to be able to remember all that. And if you can't, then it's really much harder to finish any point. And then finally, imagine you could think clearly. Imagine you could remember everything. Now you have to mentally organize with your verbal system all the places where you agree and disagree. Also, by the way, not just for statements, but for the logic that interconnects them. Mike agrees with these 2 things. He just doesn't agree with what they imply in the larger argument structure. If any of you can do this, you're amazing. Your IQ is 100x mine. I bet our debater, I bet the way that you did this is you didn't just rely on your own brain. You wrote stuff down. You wrote stuff down in a structured format, right? Like that's the way that we can extend our cognitive abilities by externalizing that memory, putting it on some sort of information display or piece of paper. So that's what we're going to do. If we want to fix cognition when people have disagreements and they want to find common ground, we're going to steal a technique, one that I've become a little bit obsessed with that none of you have heard of. 2 of you in this room have heard of. There's this literature of critical thinking educators and philosophers that use this technique called argument mapping. Instead of talking to each other, which has a lot of cognitive limits, or instead of reading 3-page essays from one person to the other, which has the same cognitive limits in the end, let's take our arguments and extract the soul of those arguments, the skeleton of those arguments, into a hierarchy. You got the main claim, and then this is subclaim and subclaim. Because you want to get smarter, and mapping arguments will get you smarter. The structure of this is really important. Most of you probably believe this, but you might need more evidence to believe this, and dissociating those 2 is important in argument. And then these 2 claims will facilitate that claim, et cetera. So it's a hierarchy where you from the bottom up have all this information that leads to one argument. This boils down an argument to something that we can handle, and it externalizes it on a piece of paper. People that do this, by the way, this technique, take a 1 semester long class in this technique, and your IQ goes up by college. 3.5 years, equivalent to 3.5 years of college, as measured by like a verbal IQ test. So this is the coolest technique that nobody's using. It's really hard. I tried to have my undergrad class last year do this and do a module on this, and they like revolted. They hated it because it's just real cognitive work. It's like going to the gym for your brain to take a YouTube video and turn it into this. Even the people that do this kind of professionally don't like to do it in this format. They like to do this. Notice that I'm taking that outline and I just did that, and I made it like cool bubbles in space because now you're better able to use your visual system, and we can geek out later about why this is easier than that. It just is. We're going to take that system, and we're going to force people to lay out their arguments in something like that. We're going to turn it into more of a game board. And so I hope you see that's the same as that. I'm going to hide that. And that's the way we're going to force people to lay out their arguments. Luis and I are going to argue about whether we should learn to map arguments. Luis is into argument mapping. I hate it. I think it's boring. So that's not a good structure because that's too Luis-centric. I'm going to make it a question instead. I'm going to swing Luis's arguments around to his side. And then I'm going to put my arguments on this side. What are my 2 main claims here? I think that it's like going to the gym. It makes my brain sleepy. And then my thinking is already invincible. Thank you very much. So that's our game board. That's how we're going to lay it out. And then I don't like that Luis's stuff is only on one side and I'm on one side. I want it to be more interleaved so that we're having more of a discussion. So instead of just laying out his stuff over there, if he wants to throw any more tiles down, then he needs to rebut. He needs to put in an answer to the claims that I'm making on the left. So Luis is going to say, but the hard work will pay off, Steve. And evidence shows that Steve's thinking is biased and overconfident. I'm getting convinced. Cool. This is the way we're going to play the game. If we took the Maha argument that you just saw, Dr. Mike's in orange, Aiden's in green, and you look at what they actually say through that 5-minute clip, these are Aiden's two biggest arguments. Those scientists are all corrupt, and nobody else is looking at all this food that's causing chronic illnesses. And Dr. Mike is still thinking of his. And Dr. Mike would say, Maha uses made-up research, and it's just, this is interesting. I'd never heard this argument before. Maha is just a big cover for budget cuts to low SES populations. Like, that was new to me and super interesting. And if they want to move forward in this game, they can't just talk about themselves. They can't just continue on their own side. The only way to move forward is to offer little rebuttals, gentle rebuttals to the other side. So Mike would say, yeah, but they're the experts. And Aiden would say, yeah, but those experts are all paid off by drug companies. And then Mike would say, yeah, Michelle Obama tried to reduce sugar in cafeteria meals 15 years ago, and your folks on your side called her the food police. What the heck? And then Aiden says, yeah, but she didn't try to replace seed oil with beef tallow, which is a thing that I didn't know I should be eating. It's interesting. I hope you see how this is going to unfold. You write a question in the center, two best reasons, two best reasons. Everything after that is just rebuttals, 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 helping you hone in your logic.
It's the kind of statement that to potentially reach an agreement would take forever because there are kind of 1,000 components to it. Yep. So when thinking about argument mapping, what's the role of coming up with an appropriate question and the consensus of what is the appropriate question that we are going to answer?
Love this question. You're foreseeing 20 minutes into the future. This is great because one of the biggest issues with a lot of these binary debates that get presented to the public is that they are abstract and they are vague, and we're making different assumptions about what we're actually arguing about. And one of the major things that this game is going to do is it's going to force people to get more specific about what their claims are. And one of the ways to win the game later, well, this is going to be a cheat code I'll introduce later, is going to be to realize that and to change the question to be more specific, and it's going to be an instant win. So you're absolutely right. But I think for the general public, especially, that is something that needs, you can't just say it, you need to let people work toward it. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So what's going to happen is, you're right. We have the word but. It still feels competitive, right? Newest version of the game, we've just changed that. I haven't updated the slides or the paper stuff to however. It's more of a gentle, right? The gentle word. We do need a little bit of push and pull, but the collaboration, the goal of the game is not going to be to persuade. When you start playing this, you are not trying to convince the other person. You are trying to solve a puzzle together to figure out why you disagree. Isn't that weird? Like, Luis and I live on the same planet, and we have a lot of the same information in front of us, and we have the different conclusion about this issue. That's crazy. Luis, let's figure that out together. That's the spirit that we're trying to push. But you do have to have a little push and pull along the way so that people can hone their thinking. Yeah, Corey. Yeah, so the idea behind this is we want to take a hierarchy. We need to have a hierarchy somehow. And long story short, this is a much more visually engaging and powerful way to lay out a hierarchy if you go to the data visualization literature. But you're right that there is the center that they're trying to agree on. and the argument kind of progresses outward. And there's something about that metaphor that if folks have ideas of making that feel more like we're converging, or et cetera, I'm all ears. But at the moment, it's more like we're trying to get into more and more detail, and then we come back to the center and revise and figure out what our question really is. Yeah. The other person wants to play. Yeah. Yep. How does that work? I think I'll give you some reasons in a minute, but let me also add that you're right that if somebody comes to the table to troll, this is not going to work. If somebody comes to the table and refuses to buy in to the game's premise, we're here to collaborate to find out why we disagree, it's a lot harder to get the game to work. However, it still works. It's weird. I wouldn't have predicted that it does, but what's going to happen, you may feel this when you play, is this is so cognitively hard to actually do this. When you go to write your first or second tile or offered rebuttals, your gears are going to be grinding in your head because you have to write things down that are precise and are recorded on paper and have to be defensible. And most people, when they play this, their emotions just drop and they turn into a robot where the only thing they can think about is the logical side of it. So I have been shocked at how just the experience of playing this forces people into a mode where they get to be more collaborative because it is so much harder to fake it and to troll and to use bad logic and imprecise claims here than it is to do verbally. It's really easy to do verbally in the end. Okay, so I want to get you playing. So why does this work? Thinking, you take your time. You're playing in silence. You're writing stuff down. You're thinking. The other person is too. So you're going to actually feel really free to be able to take your time and think out what you want to write. Bonus, you got to write something precise and defensible because it's written down. Aiden is not going to write, America is the most unhealthy nation in the world because he's going to be embarrassed a minute later because that's clearly not true. Memory, no problem. It's all on the board. Bonus, we'll get back to your point later. Mike says this, and then Aiden starts to talk about Michelle Obama or something like that. Mike can be like, no, hold on. Let's finish this thread. And it can actually force people to finish the thread. Maybe you do a fact check because it's there and it can't be ignored. It can't just be moved on from. And then agree versus disagree. Let's say that Luis and I get into one of these threads, and let's say it's over here, and I admit, like, okay, you're right, there's funding conflicts, and that's something complicated. And like, all right, fine, I'll grant you that. I don't agree on the middle, but I'll grant you that. Then we're going to use the power of emojis, and we're going to throw a thumbs up on there. So try to find places where you can say, I don't agree on the main premise, but on these thread, I feel like we've come to an agreement. And if you don't agree, if you're just like, we've gone back and forth 10 times, and we're done with this, we just have different facts, different assumptions, whatever it is, then you're going to throw a side eye on that sucker. Cool? Congrats, they just won the game. All you got to do to win the game is lay out where you agree and where you disagree. And what you're going to find is that most of the time, you agree on 3 of these. And there's only one thing where you disagree. And you realize that you're both humans that live on the same planet, and there's only one fact or one assumption that separates you. Briefly, I'll make this quick because I want to make sure I get you playing. Emotionally, this is problematic because they have set this up as a combat sport. If you don't...
Is that Maha leadership cares less about health and more about money, power, and politics.
That's literally how they set it up, right? Winning versus losing, nobody wants to lose. The group behind Aiden is rewarding his dominance and disrespect. I don't know if you noticed the glare, the death glare this lady's giving Mike, and that's the best smirk I have ever seen. Anytime Mike says something, there's the power smirk is happening in the back. And then there's no reason why you want to listen, you want to maximize talking. I really worry about this, by the way. This is the model of how to disagree that is increasingly prevalent on social media. There's a reason why this is getting more popular. This is that guy. That's his channel. I looked him up. Actually, YouTube just feeds me stuff by that guy. And I got to admit, I feel it. I see that guy, and I'm like, yeah, this junk food. Give me that video. And I find myself watching it. I'm like, no, stop it. Stop it. Because it is really addictive. It does feed that urge that we have. So the way that the game is going to help is not a persuasion battle, collaboration, find out why we disagree. And the other thing that's really going to help, is it's depersonalized. I'm not saying, Luis, you just want to do argument mapping because you have an argument mapping company and you're going to make money. Oh my God, put that finger away, right? That's attaching the idea to the person. We're collaborating on a puzzle on a table, and we can talk, we can critique the ideas without it feeling like it's an arrow pointed at the other person. And then you have to listen because you can't get past the second move without rebutting somebody else's tiles. All right, y'all gonna start? Usually we do a big topic list, but I'm gonna give you a shorter topic list for today, and I'm gonna really encourage you to take on a tough topic so that you can feel the power of this system. Yes?
Anecdotally, around what kind of evidence is admissible, or even arguments are admissible. In this kind of format, are you handle those all on an object level, or is there any way to decide, like, hey, we're not going to have that, that's ad hominem, or like,
Love it.
I don't read research papers. They're all like, we'll get engaged on the object level, or
So many things we could add to this. Completely agree. So at the beginning, we are trying to get this to be playable with your angry uncle in like 7 minutes. So we're trying to keep the mechanics really crisp. And if we want 80% of the win in 20% of the time, it's put your ideas in writing and the table, and then and find out where you disagree. I could talk to you about 5 extra levels of stuff that we'd love to add. So we have a website version of this, and that's where we're really focusing on these extra levels, because you need to progress. You need to take your time and learn it a bit at the time. We got logical fallacies. We got co-premises. We got facts versus assumptions. So, like, I could babble for a half an hour about all this. And one of the calls to action at the end will be, come hang out with us. We want other people to work with on this. There's a lot of stuff to do. And so yes, lots we could talk about there. So here's what you're going to do when you've all got a game board. So it looks a little bit different from what you're seeing, but you write the question, you pick a question. I'll give you a short list in a moment. You write it here. And then whoever's says no writes their 2 best reasons here. Whoever says yes writes their 2 best reasons here. If you're seated on the wrong side and you're crossing arms, pro trick, turn the game board upside down. And then after that, you're just going to throw down butts, butts, butts. The color should always alternate. But. And then you've got your emojis that you can tear off. So 2 reasons, yes because, no because. And then it's just all but. As much as you can, no talking. Because as soon as you start talking, you're not playing the game. You're going to need to talk a little because Luis's handwriting is terrible. You can't read anything he says. And then some of his claims are really fuzzy. He's like, how does this affect cats? And you're like, why is he talking about cats? Can we talk for a minute? But then like try to take it to a minute and then get writing again if you can. And then the way you win the game is you throw down an emoji on each thread. Either you agree or you disagree. Cool? Here's your topics. I'm going to ask you to trust me. I have 4 really hard topics up here. These are 4 of the hardest topics on campuses in US politics right now. And I'm going to ask you to trust me to try to take one of these on with your partner. You can play devil's advocate if you want. Nobody has to talk about anything they don't want to. These are all opt-in, but I would encourage you strongly to try to pick one of these. You don't want to pick one of these? Cool. Do cryptocurrency pro-con. Do AI driving cars pro-con. Do is a hot dog a sandwich? Like pick something else. But I would really strongly encourage you, I want you to feel the power by taking something that makes you a little nervous. Cool? All right, 10 minutes. Try to pick a topic in like a minute with your neighbor and get playing. If you need more gear, there's stuff here. If you don't have a partner, come to me and I'll match you up. Go. Folks that are online, we have an online playable version. Just get in the chat room. Need a partner? You don't have a game? Yeah, there's stuff here.
That's the game right there? No. Oh, writing utensil?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks, Nathan. Okay. We use.
Oh, so we start off by just writing.
Google? Yeah, if you want to do a fact check, pop out your phones, pop out Wikipedia, you got it.
Student illuminated for your answer yet.
What's that? 10? Yeah. Feel free to play devil's advocate. If you agree on everything, just take the other side. Try to get playing. Devil's advocate. So one of you just flip sides. Yeah, one of you flip sides. You should start playing because you only have about 8 more minutes. So just pick something and flip a side. They can do that. Yeah. If you haven't picked a topic yet, just pick one randomly and pick sides randomly. I'm just going to do another 6, 7 minutes on this. We got that creepy library quiet going. She's good. Take a moment to sample your experience right now. Do you feel calm? What's going on in your head? Are you excited? Are you thinking what's happening? We'll ask later. Just sample for a moment. While I'm interrupting you, I'll also mention there's a second way to win. Beyond just putting four emojis, if you can change the center tile to be a more precise statement that you both say yes or no to, instant win, cheat code, catching the snitch in Harry Potter, instant win. So keep that in mind as well.
There an option where we change the but to a compromise?
Yeah, if you don't like you want to suggest like enough rewording this central root, then yeah, it's like you could just make it like, what if we said no because big blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's fine, and that'll facilitate a thumb. Just take one more minute. See if you can get a win with the cheat code. All right, 10 more seconds. All right, wherever you are, hold there. You can always finish after, but I want to make sure we let people go by one. So I want to make sure that we close up on time. I'm going to ask you to discuss a question with your neighbors in a moment. So you have to talk between groups. So you're going to chat, these groups and these groups, right? These folks. Every group's got to talk to another group. Ready? Here's your question for 1 minute. How is that experience different from what would have typically happened verbally for a question like that? Good or bad? Go. Between group chat, go. Turn to another group, wherever they are.
I feel like it doesn't necessarily need to be a tree. It could have loops, right? Yeah. You know, a lot of the stuff that you said over here is really like, and I think that just makes it because we ourselves kind of know this topic and we don't, we kind of have to come up on the spot. But I feel like if you were someone who had an agenda, like, or like somebody who had more knowledge about it, like, or whatever the equivalent exists of that. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I think the design, especially like the design now, like the idea is like they're just or they know that they're right? And yeah, I think this just might be a matter of how the question was thrown. Because you might have a specific question that should be adjusted.
That's why I'm trying to speed it up. 10 more seconds, y'all. 10 seconds.
This should be much larger.
10 seconds. All right, y'all, come on back together. I want to make sure I let you go on time. Let me mention a couple things that I would hear frequently if we had more discussion time. I will hear frequently that this was weirdly calm, that you kind of turned into a robot, and when the gears were moving really quickly in your head, your emotions dropped a good bit, good bit. That when you came to put down your first couple reasons, a lot of you felt that like, wait a minute, why do I believe this? What is my best reason? This is a humility machine for me. When I have strong feelings and I have to put down my top 2 reasons, and I watch people all the time go, And they go, wait a minute. And then they write something down and then they cross it out. And then when they have to rebut something, the wheels start turning. So it makes people realize that a lot of what they think they know, they hadn't fully thought through. Some of you may have thought that if given a very reasonable partner sitting next to you who follows the good rules of discussion already, maybe this would have slowed you down and just talking would have been faster. But I hope you could also appreciate that in many situations, this would be really helpful. Those are 3 typical things. Let's take maybe 1 or 2 more, and then I want to make sure that we cover the other topic. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're trying to get, so even on the campus, you can get, I can show you the brief data slide. This is, I won't say what the sample is on this, just because this is going on YouTube. I just want to be a little careful, but this is a sample. Let's just say it's not just Northwestern undergrads. It's kind of a larger sample, but it's hard, like asylum, student loans, unions on this campus. It's like, or in this geographic area, it's like, nah, it's blue is liberal and red is more conservative views. It's hard to get divisions, but there are some topics where we can get strongly held views. But and long story short, we did a research study, pilot data, p equals 0.1, take it with a grain of salt. Lots of great, effects on things that we care about. And we want to get this up on Prolific, and we have a web version, and we want to get strong partisans involved to make sure that the results extrapolate. I'm confident that this is there's one other intervention out there that makes people nicer to each other. You basically play bar trivia with somebody with an opposite political hat, and afterwards you're more likely to want to be friends and not think they're crazy. But this has similar effects emotionally, but it has the cognitive effects of having your argument be more rational and more clear and your claims not ridiculous. So I'm hoping that both of those will extrapolate to those more polarized situations. Maybe one other comment. Anything else? Yes, Corey. We don't know yet. Yeah, because I think it's actually helpful that writing is slow and writing sucks. Nobody likes to write and everybody's bad. My hand hurts after a minute. So it really makes you think carefully. Your claims are extra precise and extra defensible because you don't want to write more. We actually made the cards smaller on purpose just to keep people being more concise and not putting too much on so they'd have to rewrite it. Yeah. Okay, I want to make sure I fulfill the promise of this as a workshop of how do we extrapolate these lessons to not having the game in front of you. If I were to pick 2 things, and these are not my idea, this is what you get when you go to a negotiations workshop or a mediation workshop, or you do couples therapy, or you learn how to do, or family therapy, or you learn how to solve disagreements at work. All of those things have 3 or 4 rules to follow, and there's 2 of those rules that are basically in common. Number 1, don't compete. Don't set it up so there's a winner and a loser. Set it up as a collaboration. No brainer, right? Because if there's a winner and a loser and the idea is tied to the ego, then forget about it. Rule number 2, actually listen to the other person, and to the point where you repeat back what they said better than they said it, and then ask, did I get that right? And that extra phrase really shows that you care, so it helps emotionally. And then it facilitates the discussion. Now they feel like they should do the same thing to you. Luis, could you give me, from your discussion, pick a random side and give me a 10-second summary of one of the sides on your board? Sure. Yeah. It's your quick argument. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. People that are complaining about the test being bad are just whining, and anybody can go to the public library. Okay, this is bad, right? Okay, so at least what I'm hearing you say is that first of all, there's differential access to study materials, and not everybody can go to like Kaplan or Kumon and pay $80 an hour for a test prep, and that's an asymmetry. And then there's might be biases built into the test that, and I know there's a literature on this. I know serious people actually study that, and that the reassessing the way that the testing is done in a more transparent manner could be helpful. Did I get that right? Did I miss anything? Gotcha. Awesome. Glad it. So I hope you see that we're having a calm, collaborative discussion now where I'm acknowledging points, et cetera. Think for a moment, like, your disagreement you have with that other person in the field. Let's bring this back to where, Brian wanted to take this about like collaborating with rivals scientifically. Do you always do that when you're at the conference? You set up your slide and you're like, blah, 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 and blah, blah, 2003 said this, and like, oh, they stink. Are we setting it up in a way where we're really having a conversation where we're trying to set it up as a collaboration where there's not winners and losers? And in those verbal conversations, are you making sure that you are repeating back what people said more clearly than they said it, and then saying, did I get your position right? I would say if you were to take two things away from today verbally, those would be the two. Cool? I would love to stick around. And so stick around. By the way, when you stick around, if you have just comments on the game, ideas about the game, et cetera, can Oshun, just a couple of people in the room, Athara, Nathan, Corey, anybody else in the room who's like on our, in our crew, those people that raise their hands, please, if I'm not around, please give them your feedback as well. Number two, we are trying to scale this up to the world. We are doing a research study on this, but I got to say, research is not my first priority right now. That's pilot data I just flashed up in front of you. This thing really works. I think there's a Nature Communications paper in here for somebody, but I don't have time to manage it because I'm trying to market this thing and get it on kitchen tables. Anybody wants to run the study, there's a million cool things to test. We are collecting an amazing data set of what people really believe once their emotions die down. Digitally, we are making AI. Corey's going to be hooking up AI to this puppy. We're going to be moderating and guiding people emotionally and logically. There's a lot of possibilities here. And I'm looking at the grad students and postdocs in the room. Anybody want to like take something under your wing and run with it? I would love for you to do that. So come by if you can. Let me officially just stop there and say thank you for anybody that needs to go. So if you got to go, no worries, go for it. If not, happy to continue discussion as long as people will put up with me. Yeah, please. So if you